Well, welcome to episode 38 of the Hunt Backcountry podcast. As you guys probably know, this show is brought to you by Exo Mountain Gear, and we're taking a bit of a different approach tonight and talking specifically about some new Exo products. So Exo is launching the brand new K2 titanium frame, as well as a new Daypack and some updates to their existing 3500 and 5500 packs. So whether you're an Exo user that wants to hear about the latest and greatest, or you're a hunter that's interested in a new pack, whether for day hunting or an extended trip, or none of that applies to you, but you want to hear about the behind-the-scenes process, the development of products, and learn a lot about packs in general in terms of frames and structures and how changes affect load distribution, we get pretty deep in this episode. So you're going to hear it all. Really hope you guys enjoy it. We'll certainly resume the next episode interviewing guests and talking more specifically about hunting tactics and learning together to become better hunters. But in this episode, it's all about Exo Mountain Gear and what's the latest and greatest from Exo. Hope you guys enjoy this. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, feedback, comments, episode suggestions, guest suggestions, go ahead and email us to podcast@exomountaingear.com. On to the show with Steve and Lenny from Exo Mountain Gear. Well, Steve, Lenny, welcome to the show tonight. How are you guys?
Great.
Doing good, man. It's just got back in town. Got to go to a Mariners baseball game last weekend. That was pretty fun. First time I've done that in 15 years. It was cool.
Been to a pro game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a ton of fun. They have a pretty cool field up there, right? Is that Safeco field?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, that is neat. I haven't seen a game there, but it just looks awesome.
Yeah, we were in the nosebleeds on the right field side, and you could see downtown Seattle in the background. It was cool.
Yeah, that's cool, because that's south of town, right, the field?
Yep.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and I just got back from camping. I was up there with the masses on Memorial Weekend. It was complete chaos.
You and the
Honestly,
millions of others?
I went to this place where we normally go, and normally you don't have anybody around us, and it was just literally groups of 5, 6 big trailers. It was insanity.
Really?
Yeah, but it was great to get out.
Yeah, you guys roll with the trailer too for the family camping, right?
We do, man. I broke down and bought a trailer last year. I have kids that are 3 and 5, and so that makes the wife happy. And it's Memorial Weekend, and we've been out 5 times so far this year. So
really,
yeah,
that's awesome, man.
If I have to be in a camper and I still get out, I'm happy. The deal is as soon as my son turns, we're arguing between 10 and 12. We're selling the trailer. We're going back to backpacking, because then my son and daughter can go backpacking with me. I told them they're not going to be soft and just sleep in a camper.
Yeah, that's funny. Got to raise them right.
That's right.
That's funny. Yeah, my kids are like 7 and 3 or 7 and 4, and we still do tents, but no backpacking yet.
So, I can't wait till it gets there.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, as you mentioned, Memorial Day weekend, as you listeners have probably seen, hopefully seen, we've been teasing for quite a bit some new Exo products that are going to be released pretty much as this podcast is released. So today we just really wanted to cover, what's new, talk, answer some of the questions we've been getting on social media and all that, and really just kind of explain some things and explain some updates. I guess we'll start with the new K2 frames. That's sort of the new backbone, the new platform for all the packs, the 3500, the 5500 that we've had, and then as well as the new Daypack. So all 3 of those packs are going to share this common new K2 frame. Steve, what can you tell us about that to start with?
Yeah, so it's basically kind of the latest evolution. Our first frame we called the skeleton frame, and this is kind of the skeleton 2, and we just, to shorten it up, we call it K2. So the K2 titanium frame, Lenny and I, we're always constantly tweaking and testing and coming up with, things. And frankly, 98% of the time they're failures. We get some harebrained idea and go back and, Lenny sews it up. We're sitting in his garage right now next to the sew machine where we can prototype. And 98% of the time we build something, think it's going to be great, and it ends up being terrible. But so basically when we were in Alaska last year, we had plenty of days just sitting there to think about stuff. And one of the issues we felt the current skeleton frame did was it just wasn't quite as comfortable with the really big awkward loads. We felt it was amazing with 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds, up to 100 pounds with, like a nice sandbag. Thought it carried really well. Lenny and I always go back and forth on this, and we have different back profiles, but he had a lot more lumbar pressure than I did, so I really liked it. Lenny was always kind of like with the really heavy loads complaining that there's a little bit more pressure on the lumbar than he would like. So we kind of came up with the idea to bring the frame down wider on your hips. So instead of coming down real narrow like it does, it sits out. It's basically 8 inches center to center once we bend up the titanium frame. And what that does is it adds quite a bit of stability, but at the same time, it's really the same frame shape, and then it's basically a big horseshoe now, and the bottom's open, so you still get that pivoting lateral movement with that 20, 30 pounds. It's extremely comfortable, moves with you. You can draw your bow really easily. You're crawling up and over logs. That's one thing I've gotten a lot of feedback on is guys just really get the pack on, get out in the field, and just that ability to kind of move with you, just as you're stepping over, bending over, jumping on top of rocks, stuff like that. I think that's one area where the old frame and frankly the new frame excel at.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about, changes being internal with that titanium stay. It's still titanium. Are there external changes in terms of geometry, shape that would make this new frame incompatible with the previous generation or previous packs?
No, not at all. We definitely, made sure we wanted to make this compatible through our entire line for the last 2 years and going forward. So it's completely like the 3,500, the 5,500 bags of the past are going to fit right on this frame perfect.
Yep. Yeah. About the only thing that would be obsolete at this point is the meat shelf. We've replaced, kind of jumping ahead here, but we have a new accessory that we're calling the crib. And one area that we wanted to address, which was basically a phone call I felt like I got every single day, was, hey, do I need the meat shelf in order to carry meat? And I had to explain, no, you don't need it. It's just kind of a nice accessory. It helps keep the weight higher. It's good for boned out meat. But there was a lot of customer confusion on that end. So the crib will replace both the meat shelf and the load panel. But if you have an old load panel, it'll still work, but the meat shelf doesn't anymore because basically there's no loops sewn to the bag where you would connect that back. But the crib is essentially the load panel, except Lenny came up with the idea to sew these 1-inch loops at the very top of the frame, and we use a metal G-hook. And so the new crib just connects right into the top of the frame. It can sit between the bag and the frame, just be sitting there. It weighs like 5.5 ounces, so you're really not packing much extra weight. And then when you pull the bag off, it's ready to go. It's just kind of this big cradle, crib that you just hook on and you're rocking and rolling. And it can also be run really easily as a beaver tail. Basically just run it through the bottom straps on the bag, around the front of the bag, and over the top underneath the lid. So It's a really cool, slick accessory. We're super excited about it. And it fits in line with basically what we're trying to do, or our mission statement of keeping things as simple but as functional as possible. So, anytime we can take 2 accessories and have one do the same job, probably better than the other 2 did, that's a win-win for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to run that on its own without a pack bag, being able to run it inside the pack bag, being able to run it down through and then across the outside of the pack bag as beaver tail, all with that one item, that's absolutely killer. So a question I know is going to come up and actually already has via social media, if guys are interested in the crib and they have that first generation skeleton frame, are they going to be able to sort of retrofit those G-hooks or anything to hook into their frame?
Yeah, it works. If they have the 2015 skeleton frame, because there were some minor changes that between year one and 2. Basically, they run it over and can hook it into where the shoulder straps connect in, that molly webbing that's stitched there, your torso adjustment, and it will work. It's definitely not, it's kind of an afterthought, but it does work, and those are super strong bar tack connections.
Yeah. Okay. And then, while we kind of addressed the subject of compatibility, essentially, I know we're going to have so many questions on that no matter how we address it. You guys are going to come up with one-off scenarios, but just to be clear, in terms of releasing a new Daypack, and then we still have the 35 and 55, and those will fit on previous frames, correct? All previous frames, essentially?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then to address it as well, we have a new frame that we're talking about, and same way it goes, those will fit all previous pack bags, this new frame, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So just to clear that out, guys, whether you're picking up a new pack bag like the Daypack, it would work on a previous existing frame. Whether you pick up just the new frame and you already had a 35 or 55, you can continue to run that pack bag on the new K2 frame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Essentially, everything we've ever made is compatible. As far as bags to frames and accessories to bags, across the line, except for the meat shelf now is going to be obsolete.
Okay, awesome. So any other thing worth highlighting then on that K2 frame? I mean, we talked about internally that titanium and then the profile of that, but how else did you sort of address maybe increasing that heavy load capacity while still keeping, the flexibility with the lighter loads? Anything specific you want to highlight there?
The biggest change was we also went to 1/2-inch diameter titanium tubing, and so what's really nice about it, and it runs the kind of the perimeter, the outside edge of the pack up and down the side. So as when you go to pull on all the compression straps, you're basically pulling right on the frame. Whereas before we had aluminum cross stays in there, and those were designed to kind of flex and move a little bit so they wouldn't break. We actually early on tested carbon, and one of the first things we did was put 100 pounds in that and drop it, and the carbon just shattered, because it's just kind of exposed and anyways, but now the compression straps are just pulling right on the titanium frame, and so it doesn't matter necessarily how tight you pull or basically what load is on the other side of that. The frame will not change its shape. It's always going to have the exact same curve profile, and that basically what that translates into is a load doesn't get uncomfortable. It just gets heavier and heavier, and it's kind of hard to describe that difference, but it's kind of like why a straight up pack frame does really well with heavy loads, assuming it's designed good, is that it's not going to change shape and that your suspension's always going to be the same. So the new 1/2-inch diameter titanium, stuff is stout. But that was one of our things we really worked on was we built this and we built the frame a little bit wider at the bottom, and it was really stiff. We had built it probably back in October, and we did a few hikes with it, and basically kind of one of those just threw it aside and go, man, that's way too stiff. Let's move on to the next idea. And we ended up kind of coming back to it and really, little tweaks here and there. Like I said earlier, I can't tell you how many hundreds of variations where Lenny would sew on the shoulder harness webbing in like 5 different spots, and then we'd go hike a mile and move the next piece on and hike a mile and just be testing and tweaking. And it's kind of a fun process going through all of it because you really get just really dive deep into why the load feels the way it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
sure.
Some of this is, Steve and I would laugh about it. We're like, titanium sucks because, honestly, it's super expensive. It's really hard to bend, but once you hit it, it's awesome. And that's, some of the reason, nobody else is using it in the industry right now is because it is difficult to work with. It's expensive, but once you get it right, we just feel like it is the perfect combination of being super stiff, but still being able to flex with you. And I think that, we're kind of, getting that dialed in more and more with the evolution of this new K2 frame.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know that, you mentioned adjusting, webbing and the shoulder harness and all that. There's been some changes to the quote-unquote outside, if you will, in terms of the lumbar pads changed a little bit. Maybe some of the webbing details changed in minor ways. For those who are interested in those nitty-gritty details, what do you want to cover there?
I'd actually like to back up a little bit. I think a lot of people are probably going to ask, why are these changes? And I think that's probably... was there something wrong with the other pack? Steve and I, we're going to every show there is, looking at all the new products from all our suppliers. We're constantly talking to all our suppliers, figuring out what they have new, our manufacturers talking about new designs, new way of building things. And frankly, that's how a lot of this evolution, comes forward is, a new product comes out and we say, wow, we could use this in a new way. Or, Or, somebody on a forum has an idea. We pay a lot of attention to that kind of stuff of what people are saying and our customers. And somebody might have an idea, wow, why don't they do it this way? And, Steve and I, we make notes about that and say, okay, hey, we didn't think of that. That's a good idea. Let's put that aside. Maybe someday there's a way to do that. Now, suddenly we talk to a new supplier, and now they have a new product that they've designed that we can actually do that now. So, a lot of this evolution is just the fact that there's new stuff always coming out in the market, and we're always going to look at ways on how to maximize that to, give our customers the best pack there is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's one of those things that's, it's like anything else. It's technology is always changing, always getting better. Mm-hmm. People, I think, have a tendency to get upset when something new comes out. But the thing is, if you're, I think, a good company, something always new is going to be in the works, right? It's not that you guys set out by any means, because I've heard the conversations to release like a new pack every year and do a 2015 and 2016 and 2017. What you're doing, which we've already hinted at, is testing hundreds and hundreds of variations constantly, and it's not till you come across like a real sweet spot, a real improvement that's really going to bring value to people that at that point you're going to release it. And even that's only after testing, right? So it's not like you're coming out with something to come out with something new,
No, honestly, it'd be a heck of a lot easier not to come out with anything new, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to come out with something new, but it is truly that, what you just said, like, it has to be, good enough to justify coming out with something new. If it's, that good, we'll do it, frankly.
So going back to that question, I guess, there's been minor changes to the lumbar pad and things like that. What can you tell us about the sort of the suspension, the harness side of the frame?
Yeah, we did. A lot of this is, like, if you just looked at a picture of the new K2 frame, you'd go, man, that looks really similar to the old one. And in some ways it is. There's how the torso adjusts is identical. The shoulder harness is basically identical. One change we did make went to 1-inch webbing in the shoulder harness. And frankly, we redesigned this and the pack kind of got lighter. And so we felt we actually had adding 1-inch webbing added 1.7 ounces, if I remember right, by the time you do all the webbing and the buckles to the pack. And in the past, that was 1.7 ounces that we didn't feel like we could get. But now that the pack got a little bit lighter, we kind of added that back in. So went to 1-inch webbing there. The lumbar pad is a little bit bigger. It's only a 1/4 inch thicker and then about an inch taller. Not really a big difference, but it does help create a little bit more of an air gap between your lower back for ventilation and distribute that load a little bit more. So that's definitely just been a nice little, it's not this drastic improvement, but a nice little improvement. Trying to think, the other difference is we do have a composite. It's basically a fiberglass composite horizontal stays now instead of the aluminum ones. So that's one of the areas where we saved quite a bit of weight over the aluminum ones. They're super stout, basically indestructible. We've dropped them, jumped on them, driven our truck over it, and have yet to even have one think about breaking. So
one thing that, we mentioned kind of in passing in these discussions is, Steve and Lenny, you guys are going back and forth on testing, and I think is really interesting that it's, the two of you, and you, as you mentioned, you have different shapes, different profiles to your back, sometimes maybe different preferences. You mentioned specifically lumbar pressure. How is this new design maybe decrease some of that lumbar pressure that Lenny was experiencing while still keeping, the correct amount of pressure between weight distribution at the lower back and hips and things like that?
Yeah, it was actually that's probably the thing that we focused most of our attention on, was trying to get the pressure as even all the way across the belt, all the way from the front of your hip bones all the way to the lumbar. And it has been a really kind of interesting process, just because, like I said, our old frame was narrow and it put all the weight basically on your lumbar, which was great for, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. And, from depending on your back profile, for Lenny with 100, he felt it was never painful, but maybe slightly uncomfortable with like 100 pounds. And for me, it felt great. One of the prototypes that Lenny built early on, The frame was really, really wide, and it essentially had no lumbar pressure at all. And so you put it on, and you go, oh man, this feels great. But the second you put 100 pounds in it, basically all that weight was sitting on your hips. And so after, and even, on your hips, it felt good for the first mile or two. That's one thing we definitely figured out was you really got to do like a bare minimum 3 miles with 100 pounds before you really start to feel everything that's going to happen. But basically all that weight with that real wide frame was right on your hips. And after a while, it just kind of just started feeling like it was really pulling down on you. And also the pack would slide a little bit down on you, like tend to want to slide down to sit on your butt, right where the lumbar is, because there was no pressure keeping it in place. And so we really just started fine tuning. We had both ends of the spectrum there, and we kept playing back and forth, just trying to get that perfect combination. And so essentially now our frame comes down 8 inches apart, and we have a piece of HDPE plastic that gets sewn in, and it's kind of like a hexagon shape down there at the bottom, and we stitch it specifically into one panel of the frame panel, one piece of Cordura, and then the belt is sandwiched with Velcro underneath the lumbar pad. And it was just an endless amount of, hundreds of variations getting it to where both Lenny and I felt like the pressure was about as perfect as possible. So whether it's 20 pounds or 120 pounds, we're really happy now with, you just feel like it's 33% of the pressure on your lumbar, 33% on the right side, and 33% on the left side. It's about as even as possible. So it's something we really played with a lot and feel like it's pretty dialed in.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you have 100 plus pounds, the weight's got to go somewhere. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter is that there's no magic formula where it just goes away. So it's just figure out where does it go most comfortably. And I think one change that we've been aware of is, like with our first generation pack, if our frame fit you, because it followed the profile of your back, and if it fit you perfect, I don't think there's a pack out there that would beat it no matter what the weight was. However, everybody's built a little bit different, so maybe if a guy was really big, it was a very specific shape that we had it to, and it may not be perfect to everyone. I think our new pack is a little bit more robust, and I think it'll fit a wider range of guys with like less, or there's more, margin for the bigger guy, skinnier guy. And that's kind of one thing that we wanted to focus on was, because Steve and I, we have a really similar build. And, so it fit us really well, but maybe the really big guy, small guy, we want to make sure it fit everybody in between.
Yeah.
I think that's what the new one does a little bit better.
Yeah, it's definitely more forgiving of, whether it's fit on your body and also, throwing a big awkward load in it. Just that stiffer frame and then sitting wider, it's just not quite as critical that everything's perfectly lined up. And, granted, Lenny and I are, we're both basically 5'11", 170, pretty like stereotypical, build, and probably right in the middle of where everybody is. So it's a good place to be. But like Lenny said, that, the big guys, the guys that's 6'3", 260, I think the new frame's definitely going to be, really comfortable for him as well.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. It's amazing just, hearing all these details about how much goes into it and trying to find a solution, that works so well for so many people. It's got to be, no wonder it's a never-ending quest, right?
Yeah, I need to keep track. They said there's sewing machines in Lenny's garage here, and between October and now, his wife and my wife are just like beating their heads against the wall. Like, well, it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm heading over to Lenny's, and Trish just shakes her head at me. Definitely like a lot of time and effort goes into, doing this, and we take it, we take it serious. We want to put the best pack out there that we possibly can.
Yeah, because honestly, we feel like that's our advantage. There's a lot of packs out there, a lot of choices, but I think our advantage in this is that we hunt, we use the packs, and that is what is getting put into these packs. We're not hitting a price point, we're not hitting a certain market, we're not, doing what we've always done. We use it, we're just constantly looking for the best way to do it, on how we do it, and I think that's our advantage.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense, man. There's so much out there that's doesn't have the time, the effort, the energy, put into it. It just has marketing put into it, to be honest, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, one major difference is, a lot of companies will just have a designer that's sitting behind a computer and sketches it up, and they sell a prototype and go, oh yeah, that looks good. And we kind of do it the hard way in that we test and prototype and hike and test and prototype and hike and over and over and over again. And, it just kind of trickles down to the final product, which it's always funny for Lenny and I to look at it, because you're like, I remember the very first year, we're like, I don't even know how we got to where we got, because it's such just like
it's an incremental.
Yeah, such an incremental thing, and you build something, and then you find the problem with it, and then you fix it, and then you move on to the next problem, and you fix that, and just like by the time you get to the end, it's like that story of when you're a little kid, that game you played where you passed a message around in a circle from one person to the next. By the time you get to the end, you don't even know what you started with.
Yeah. I remember seeing super early pictures from you, Steve, before EXO was really EXO, and like those packs are almost unrecognizable, compared to where and I'm talking about like compared to where you ended up with the first pack you launched, not compared to now.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Like I said, we're always going to continue to push and innovate, and when we come up with something that we feel is ready, we're going to put it out there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of putting it out there, unless we have something to continue to address on the frame, I know that guys are absolutely chomping at the bit to get more details on the new Daypack.
The 2000 bag that was plans for year one, but frankly, we're going to build it in year one and sell it in year two. And it's a full year and a half delayed, just because we've been so stinking busy and couldn't keep up with orders as is. But, we started with the 3500, 5500 because, frankly, that's what Lenny and I do. We're not doing a whole lot of day hunting. It's pretty much all backpacking. But, we knew there'd be a good demand for a super versatile, lightweight, 2,000 cubic inch size bag. It's been a fun process working on it and developing it. We kind of battled back and forth between when we first started really digging into designing this on did we want to go ultralight with it, or did we want to go more feature orientated as far as access and pockets and organization? Because I think the stereotypical backpacker is a little bit less organization. It's like kind of more ditty sacks, and you got your bigger items. For the day hunter, he's probably more, I don't know why it shouldn't be that much different, but it seems like it's more organization orientated. Pockets for this, pockets for that, access, getting in and out of the bag a lot. And so we kind of just, sketched up some ideas and started sewing away and got to where we are. Yeah.
So go ahead, Lenny.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely from day one. I think the question is when are you going to come out with a day bag? So we have been listening to that, working on it. It was just, getting the time to do it. And it's funny too, as our lives change, I have 2 kids, and frankly, I'm probably going to day hunt a little bit more now. So, because I can't quite get out on those, 3 to 5 day hunts, back to back to back like I used to. So, I'm excited about this bag. Frankly, I'm going to use it this year. And I may use it for more than a day bag.
Yeah, that's one cool thing, and it was an idea Lenny came up with, was to do a roll top on it. So really the one, on a side note, our cubic inches, I don't know why we've underrated them so much. I actually did an actual cubic inch measurement the other day of all 3 bags. And just so for the listeners that are like geeking out on this stuff, the 2000 is 2,700 cubic inches bag volume with another 250 of the stretch pleated pocket. So it's barely, basically 2,950 cubic inches total bag volume.
And if that's if the roll top was basically extended all the way with about 2 rolls.
Yeah, that's the roll top with, basically filled to the brim, just rolled up enough to cinch it down. Okay. Then the 3500 is 4,600 cubic inches. So that's bag, lid, side pockets, front stretch pocket. And then our 5500, which I've always told a lot of guys, they're like, hey, you need to make a 7,000 cubic inch bag. I'm like, well, our 5500 really is. And it's actually 7,000 like 105 cubic inches when you add in all the pockets. So that's something to look at when you're comparing our weights to other companies and what they list the specs at. But so yeah, the 2000s, we built it with that roll top, which is super convenient way to have capacity when you need it. Even if you are day hunting and it's late season and you got like some insulated bib coveralls that you want to throw in the pack, or if you're going to go hike in somewhere and sit, you've got that. You basically unclip the lid or the collar on both sides, unroll it, and you got all this extra volume all of a sudden. And when you are just day hunting with some water and food and a flashlight in your pack, you just roll that up nice and tight, and all that volume goes away. So it's a really cool feature that we're super happy with.
Yeah, and one thing worth mentioning too, if you guys haven't seen the Daypack, this might sound funny if you're thinking that the roll top is the way to access the main compartment, but it certainly isn't. If you can just kind of address that, because I'm trying to think objectively here of like guys hearing this description and not knowing any better and thinking, really, am I going to have to like unroll this thing 8 times to get a snack out of my main bag or what?
No, yeah. So we got a big old U zipper. It's like 24 inches on each side. They're basically run up one side, run over the top, and down the other. So you got this big panel that flops out. So super great access right into the bag from top to bottom. We also built just inside of that panel, there's a mesh storage pocket, and that way you can just unzip the top of that and flop it open. So you don't have to undo the whole thing and have all your gear fall out. If you got something in that pocket, it's really easy to access. And then we have the same Velcro strips that we have like inside our 3500 and 5500, so you can run an additional 4 of our stash pockets inside. So really you could have 5, little 4 by 8 inch mesh storage pockets for a lot of organization. And then jumping on one of our favorite features, and it's one of I don't know if it was my idea or Lenny's, but it was our hidden lid. And we knew we didn't want to have a lid with it, but at the same time, a lid is a super just convenient, quick access pocket. It sits on top. There's no compression straps in the way. You put your food in there, your headlamp, whatever. It's really easy to access. So we came up with the idea with this hidden lid, and it's basically a zipper that sits right behind your head, right at the top of the frame, and it accesses this 8-inch deep pocket, and we sourced some really nice, it's like a thick, fleecy stretch material. So if you're going to drop your cell phone in there, your camera in there, it's not going to get scratched up or rattle around making noise. And it's just a slick little pocket. We're just really happy with it. I think a lot of guys, it's going to be one of their favorite features.
Very cool. So what would be, with the K2 frame and the Daypack, what would be that weight?
4.5 pounds.
Okay.
So, yeah, like I said, we could have easily made it under 4, had, been able to put 3.8 pounds on it but at the end of the day, if you are day hunting, weight isn't as critical. You're not really counting those 8 ounces as much as you would if you're backpacking. And we felt like the customers, and ourselves included, would appreciate having more features and, organization to it.
So is there any particular, because I know, on 3500 and 5500, it's a question that we get a lot. Is there any particular way or ideal way to set up and run water bladders with the Daypack?
Yeah, so on the new 2,000 cubic inch bag, we actually did build in a water bladder holder. So on the inside there, right against your back, there's a sil nylon water bladder holder. Then the port comes right out the middle, kind of like our 3500 and our 5500.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like a 20-inch deep sleeve that's 8 inches wide, fit a full 3-liter bladder, no problem.
Yep.
Again, just kind of keeping it more, access and organization orientated versus streamlined of our 3500.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of more out of the box, like ready to go versus, it's like on the backpacking guys they have their own idea what they want, and our 3500, 5500 kind of lets them do that. This is kind of more, load it up and go.
Yeah. So one question, we did when we first announced, I think back in like March, we put out a picture of the 2000, and we thought we'd be shipping probably earlier in May, but just by how production's worked out, we'll be shipping here middle of June. But a lot of guys were wondering if it came with a different frame or its own frame. And it's kind of, Lenny and I, had to ask the question to ourselves, like, well, do we want to do a day pack with a different frame? And ultimately the answer for us is no. We want, basically the 1K2 frame and 3 bags of interchange on it. And the premise being at any given point, you could kill an animal. And I don't care if you're on day 5 or a mile from the truck, just, hunting that morning, you want to be able to start packing meat right away. It just makes no sense, just wasted time, wasted energy, having, a day pack that you can't pack any meat with. You got to go hike all the way back out to the truck. And, it's definitely traditional to have a pack frame sitting there waiting, but we kind of want to defy that tradition and have a pack that can truly do everything that you need it to do.
Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I mean, our 2,000 cubic inch bag fits, all our other frames as well.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly that's going to be an option, and an option that I know guys are waiting for, because we've heard from them, guys who already, owners of a 35 or 55 who are just waiting to buy this Daypack bag and put it on their frame.
Yep.
Absolutely. So one other thing for sure that's worth talking about on this new Daypack is, you've obviously kept in mind guys who run optics, spotters and tripods and things like that. Can you talk a bit about the features of the Daypack for optics?
Yeah, definitely. So right on the very back panel, we use our same stretch material that we use on our 3500. So it's basically a vertical zipper. You could slide in an 85 millimeter. I'm not sure if we can get a 95 in there.
Yeah, 95 would fit, but it's going to be tight.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit tight. But we pleated that pocket. First, we did it without pleated on our testing, and then it was just a little bit too tight when you fill it up. So that pocket is pleated with a full vertical zipper, so you can get to your spot and scope, which we think is very important, with basically one zip. And then we do have side pockets. They're just shorter to keep it a little bit lighter that you can slide your tripod into for super quick access.
Yeah, very good. Any other things worth mentioning there? We want to kind of move on to some of the updates to the 35 and 55 with the new lid.
Yeah, that pretty much covers the 2000. Like I said, it's going to be it's an awesome little bag. Everybody that I've got that stopped by the office and looked at it, and aesthetically, it's just a really good looking bag as well. And we're really excited to get some photos of guys using it out in the field and get it out there.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, still have the 35 and the 5500. The biggest change there is going to be the lid. So let's start off talking about that. Kind of why the lid was redesigned, and then some of the benefits of this new design as guys look to pick up their first 35 or 5500.
Yeah. So this lid is kind of the perfect example of what Lenny hit on earlier, and it's really just us listening to our customers. Every review email I get, whether it's positive or negative, I save in an email folder. We're always paying attention to forums, talking to guys. We go down to the Hunt Expo, and guys that have the pack, like Lenny and I are like, hey, what do you like? What don't you like? We're always trying to improve. And the lid was pretty much a consistent on our old pack. People weren't happy with. They felt like it was a little floppy.
When it was empty.
Yeah, when the pack was empty, they just felt like it never naturally set on top of the frame really well. And so that's what we basically set out to solve that problem. We just wanted to improve it. And we ended up kind of not totally redesigning the lid, but it's got quite a few nice changes. The biggest difference would be ladder locks instead of buckles on the frame panel side. And those they snug up so much tighter, and really, you didn't need to be able to unbuckle the lid completely, and you still can just slide the webbing off the ladder lock. It just, it takes an extra second, so it's not a big deal. And then Lenny had come up with the idea of, instead of having a collar on the frame side of the lid, just to sew basically right into the seam, which creates this really nice natural kind of arch that goes to the top of the frame. And it's a complaint that we saw a few times where guys felt like they were going to reach back for the load lifters and they were grabbing the lid straps, or the load lifter was kind of getting caught up in the lid. And now basically there's nothing obstructing that at all. So it's really, when you do go back to grab your load lifter, it's super clean, nothing in the way. And then we also made the lid a little bit taller. And, we had a few people asking for a bigger lid. And that's kind of a tricky one for us, because there's not a lid just sits there and there's nothing really compressing it. And so if you get too big of a lid, you're just going to have stuff rolling around and flopping in there if it's not full. And frankly, you don't want to put a ton of stuff in the lid and nothing in the bag if you were just day hunting or something, because then you just got all this weight up top that's kind of just sitting there. So, but we did increase the volume by about 1.5 inches. So it's taller, but then tapers up in the middle. So the advantage there is when the bag is full, like the snow collar is full underneath, and then you tighten down the lid really tight, suck it down, there's still a good amount of volume inside the lid that you can use.
Then, we also took the front lip where the zipper is, and we increased the height of that as well. Because we did have some guys, us included, sometimes, when you go to undo, if you get a lot of stuff in there, you tip your pack over, a lot of the stuff would fall out of the lid. So we're just kind of looking at ways of tweaking that, and we just kind of raise that lip, use a little bit stiffer zipper as well there, to kind of address that as well.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, that's kind of the fun thing, with Steve and I, obviously we both hunt, we both, work on the design. And it's funny, some stuff for me is a complete pet peeve, and he's like, I don't know what you're complaining about. And let's go back and forth on it. Or he'll have some pet peeve, and I'm like, that doesn't bother me. But, then as you start listening, to people, to our customers on forums, and I'll be like, I told you.
Yeah.
Address this.
Lenny was always, a little, just bothered him, and I had no issues with it. And it was, he got to point the finger and said, aha, I was right.
Yeah.
I was excited to change that, actually.
So with this new lid, it's going to come with the 3500 and 5500, which raises some questions, a few questions, I guess. One is, can it be run with the new Daypack? Two would be, can it run with previous generation 35 or 5500s? And then is there any way to set up, I know, in the past you could, run like a lid and a beaver tail. Could you run this new lid with a crib, for example?
Yeah. So when we designed this, we definitely wanted to keep all that in mind. So you'll see on our 2,000 cubic inch bag, there's going to be 2 D-rings that are on the side. And that's exactly what it's built for, is if somebody does want to run the lid, it'll basically be an accessory. We probably won't run it unless we're doing an overnight trip, and we think it'll kind of get in the way, so we're not going to encourage it, but it's definitely possible. And then on the older packs, it will fit. All you'll have to do is remove the male 3/4 inch buckle that's on the frame, and you'll just run it through the new ladder lock that is on the lid, and it'll fit perfect. And let's see, you had one more question there.
Yeah, could you, run it with the accessories and, kind of that setup?
Okay, yeah, so then you can also run it with the frame, the lid, and the crib. Basically what you'll do is we use a D-ring system that connects to the back of the lid. You'll pull those off and run it through some webbing on the crib, and then those all work together.
Yeah, so on that crib, if you wanted to, you could basically run the lid, our Slurpee stalker, and the crib is like a super lightweight setup. If you wanted to run a dry bag in that, be a pretty cool, just simple setup.
Did we cover the capacity of the lid? I'm thinking for those guys who are, hearing about the Daypack, we kind of mentioned it's closer really to 2950 if you kind of maximize it. If you throw a lid on top of that, clearly you're going to break 3,000, right?
Yeah, you'd be like 3,350, something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely can do some overnights. I'm sure I could do 2 days, maybe 3, 2 nights, 3 days out of the 2,000 pretty easily if I wanted to.
Yeah, I think early season, or if you're hunting with somebody and you got good gear, you could definitely do it.
Yeah.
It'll be a little tight.
Yeah. So any other notable changes on the 35 or 5,500 bags?
Not on the bags themselves, no. They're basically identical. We get, I think consistently, I get guys buying our bags. Maybe if our frame didn't fit them, they were putting them on other companies' frames. Our bags seem to get really positive reviews all across the line. It's definitely something we put a lot of effort in. That bag's remained relatively unchanged since year one. It's just a really great layout for backpacking, just access and the right amount of pockets, the right weight, the right size, whether it is the 35 or 5,500. No changes there really.
Yeah. So we mentioned the crib a bit. Do we want to address that anymore, or are there any other new accessories coming down the pipeline?
I'd like to talk about the crib a little bit. I mean, one of the things about the crib is, we talk about, new products. Frankly, we had the toughest time finding a good G-hook. And, for the first couple of years, we talked to all our suppliers, manufacturers, everybody trying to find a good G-hook that we felt would actually hold tension well and was strong enough to do what we wanted it to do. And it was tough to find. And finally this year, we were able to find a manufacturer that we could get it in, anodized black, and it was tough. It was lightweight. We felt like it keeps the tension really well. And that really allowed us to do the crib, frankly.
Yeah.
Because before there wasn't a really good way to use G-hooks, because they're just not good ones out there.
Yeah.
And so once we got that G-hook, and that kind of spawned, hey, we can drop 2 products and just use this one, and it makes them more versatile, and we think a little bit better.
Yeah, because we had used some G-hooks before, the back of the shoulder harness connection, and those won't, for some reason, it's a really terribly designed product. It has a ladder lock connection, but you go to cinch on it, and the webbing just pulls right through. And so, just finding the right G-hook wasn't easy. And the company that had this one only made them in silver, and obviously we don't want some shiny silver thing on our hunting packs. And finally, we were able to get with them, source it, and have custom anodized black ones, some matte black ones made up. And we're really happy with them.
Well, it's been good, guys. Is there anything else to kind of talk about, or pretty much get everybody over to the website, exomountaingear.com, and kind of have them check some things out?
Yeah, like I said, we'll be, Wednesday here, June 1st. The website will be updated with everything. And we're going to start shipping. We can never put an exact day on it because there's always flexible things, but right around the middle of June should be, if you ordered on the 1st, you'd be shipping around the 15th if all goes well. And man, we're just excited. We're ready to, we're kind of out of the design phase here into production and shipping, and then next thing we know, it's going to be August 30th, and we're backpacking in somewhere. So looking forward to the summer, and if anybody's got any questions, send me an email, just info@exomountaingear.com, and I'll get back to you, or just give us a call, and we'll be glad to help out.
Yeah, and I just want to say, thanks to our customers for the feedback and, the interaction. We love it. It helps us. So keep it up.
Yeah, I think that was one of our favorite things about going down to the Hunt Expo, is just being able to talk to so many guys, that are customers, or looking at buying a pack, and just because it is basically an online based business, and being able to interact face to face it's just awesome.
Well, Steve, Lenny, thank you so much for the time. As always, guys, as you heard, any questions or anything like that, just send it to info@exomountaingear.com. And then, of course, with the podcast, if you guys have any thoughts, questions, comments, guest suggestions, any of the above, go ahead and email that to podcast@exomountaingear.com. Steve and Lenny, we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Mark.